Hello, everybody out there. Tammy, Texas Desert Rose here. And my favorite topic to talk about are cultures, other cultures particularly, because I found that in all the places I lived, I was always surprised by at least one or two things, but usually a whole lot more than that. In my little sheltered life here in Texas, I learned a lot when I went overseas. So, to help me with this topic is Miss Melissa. Hello, Melissa. Good to meet you.
Hello, thank you for inviting me. I love the topic.
Plus, they get a lot of Southern accent today. I like it.
Absolutely. Texas, North Carolina, not that
You
far
know,
apart, right?
Not
Yeah.
that far. Neither one would admit to that, but we are a lot alike.
Right. We would of course argue about who has the best barbecue, but
Ugh.
that's still up for bids, right? So
Yes, yes, it is. Yes, it is. So, thank you for joining me here on Texas Desert Rose. Everybody, welcome. Thank you. Like, share, subscribe, follow, whatever it calls for. It is so important to get these topics out there. You know what made me feel like I really want to talk about this topic again is that, Melissa, I don't think I told you this, but I returned from Okinawa, Japan, a couple of years ago in June. And it took me to this day, I'm sound sensitive because we have such a loud culture. And I found that almost without fail, overseas, it's just quieter, at least the places I was in. So, you want to tell us a little bit about you and maybe some of the places you've lived, if you're willing to share?
yeah, absolutely. So I was born and raised in North Carolina, in Western North Carolina, in Wilkes County, and that was
Beautiful.
definitely a very quiet place. Um,
Definitely.
in the western part of the state, near the Highlands area. So that was definitely a good place. Moved down east to go to college, so stayed in North Carolina, but moved to the eastern part of North Carolina and lived in Goldsboro, North Carolina, which is also a lovely place. However, a bit noisier as it is home to Seymour Johnson Air Force Base. So we
Kind
have
of like
quite a
Charlotte.
few. Yeah, we have quite a few fighter jets that fly over from time to time there, of course. So the
Yes.
base brings a lot of busy, necessary activity there. I just returned from England, living abroad for a year in the UK. And one of the things I did love about the UK in general is it had a lot more green spaces, a lot more
Wow.
quiet spaces to walk and to reflect. Footpaths, which actually reminded me a lot of Western North Carolina because you were literally walking through someone's pasture or walking
Wow.
through someone's yard. So it felt very familiar to childhood years from that. So I do agree with you that depending on the location that you live, there does seem to be some quieterness, not just to the actual sound around you, but to the busyness of life. I find coming back
Oh,
stateside that the noise that I pick up a lot here from my friends that I've been separated from is the busyness in their lives. It's not necessarily the actual sound noise, but this constant need. And I myself had that same drive, right? To that
intensity.
yeah, we must be busy. We've got to be accomplishing something all the time. And I think probably my greatest moment for discovering that was I spent several trips to Kenya, didn't actually reside and live in Kenya, but spent much time there. And I remember at the end of the day, once we were sitting with some locals and I said, what are we going to do now? Because we're those Americans that were there. I was there for working with a mission group. And of course, we want to get as much done as we can, right? And he looked at me
What
and
part, do you mind me asking what
yeah,
part of Kenya?
we were in Maua, which is a very rural part of Kenya. And in that particular village, the gentleman looked at me and said, we're just going to pass the rest of the night. And I looked at him like, what does that mean? Right. But it was
Right.
sitting around a fire, telling stories, like actually enjoying your meal and not like sucking it down. Right. So I find the busyness, not just the noise, but also just our busyness as a culture.
I remember anticipating the need, little bit of a desire to come back home. And I was really, a colleague asked me, what is the part you don't look forward to? And I said, I don't want to pick up the intensity in the go, go, go again. But I'd love to know your thoughts on this. What I found, of course, probably like you, I was gone all during COVID and coming back. When when you're not here and then you come back, you feel it a lot stronger. But I'm kind of surprised. I'm assuming it's because of COVID. There's less connection. Maybe it's cell phone stuff. I'm sure that plays
Mm,
into it, but
hmm.
there's less connection. Like I'm very like you. I'm outgoing. I can meet a stranger. I'll talk to a pole,
Yeah. Right.
but it's been harder this time.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
That is definitely a question I think that many of us are asking. Uh,
Right.
I work in the mental health field, and so I think that's a question that we are asking of ourselves, of our clients, of just culture and spaces in general. I think that I am seeing some connectivity, some return to that, that people are longing to be connected. But if I had to throw a dart at it, I'm going to say, and I might be unpopular for this, but I'm actually not going to blame COVID. I truly believe it's the devices. I think COVID aligned at a time where it allowed people to kind of assume that, right? And I'm not saying that COVID didn't
I
contribute.
just don't know. I'm like kind of lost.
Yeah, but I really do think as a therapist who sees like families who every person's in their bedroom or their room with an iPad with a phone. I see families out for dinner with devices. And I'm not going to say I did not see devices in the UK because that would be telling a story. But what I
Sure.
did see more of, I did see people out in restaurants, out in pubs, out in green spaces without devices that were socializing, families who were having picnics, families who were taking walks. And I did see a lot more of what we would say is that intentionality of connection and relating that I
Mhm.
do feel like the devices are causing issues. I mean, that's just my opinion.
I'm wondering if it's not, and when I said COVID, I'm really thinking deeper here. I don't necessarily think it's because we were removed from people. I think the divisiveness that happened with the
Mm,
COVID, vaccination, blah, 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 all of that, I was protected from that. I was in the Middle East, in a country that was studied for how well they handled everything, but you did not refuse to do what they said to do, or you were off the island.
right.
Um, and I think
Yeah.
a lot of countries were like that. So I think the devices, the
Mm,
divisiveness, um, political and otherwise, I feel more of I hope you're right that where people are getting out more because the fact is we are social beings, even introverts
yes.
need it.
Yes. Hmm. And even in addition to mental health, I have a degree in public health. And even just from the public health standpoint of more walkability and watching
Mm.
people, I walked so much when I lived in the UK and it was
Yes,
fabulous. And now that
yes,
I'm back here, and by living in a rural area, you drive so many more places. I'm having to be a lot more cognizant of, okay, Melissa, you have to go walk today or you need to get these steps in because it was just a part of my day and a part of my life last time.
yeah,
And now I look at my watch is screaming at me, you're way off track. And I'm like, no kidding. So I do find that just that movement in general and that being a part of the day to day versus, okay, I have to stop and go to the gym is just a part of everyday life, which also leads to better connectivity and better mental well being as well.
truth. I will say, to your point, definitely Japan being one of the top most technically advanced countries, but connection, eye contact comes first. That
Mm-hmm.
it's not like this. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
some of the teens, but really, respect is so much part of the culture, which means you're
Right.
not on devices and ignoring, and you respect. I can't speak for China. I didn't go there. I know in Taipei area, the same. And I also worked in South Korea. I would love to know the different cultures that you've lived or worked in.
Yeah, sure. So, in addition to Kenya, I've also done extensive medical mission work in Guatemala. And I think one of the two things I would say about being in those cultures, Kenyan and Guatemalan, I am Southern and we talk about Southern hospitality, but I'll tell you, their hospitality rivals Southern hospitality for sure. And my experiences there in Guatemala were just beautiful. The people were so hospitable, the food marvelous,
Yes,
and just the graciousness of people in the receptivity, the openness, the
gratitude.
positivity, and the gratitude. Yes, and the gratitude.
Mhm.
And that was speaking of gratitude. That is also something that really brings a point home about cultures and awareness and different ways of looking at the world, right? I know that when I was in Kenya, wound up talking with a woman who had had many, many losses of children, like multiple losses of young children. We're talking about children who die from lack of access to simple vaccines or simple the ability to give your child an antibiotic when they're sick, things that we take for granted in the
Very
United
much.
States
Yeah.
because it's just, I mean, I remember literally going to my hotel room and weeping, thinking to myself, my children will never die because I can't get them an antibiotic, right? And so this mother had lost many children. And of course, as a trained therapist and grief counselor, what comes to mind? Trauma, trauma, trauma.
Hmm.
However, the way when we talked about this subject, the way that it was approached by these people, not that she wasn't saddened by that loss, but it
Of
didn't
course.
swell up and overwhelm her life because this is a part of the journey. This is a part of what was the day to day. And she had learned to live into the health and the well being of the children that she had. Again, please don't
Mhm.
misunderstand. I'm not saying that she was not grief stricken at times and went through that. But whereas sometimes here, I feel like in our westernized culture, we shift and we want to focus on the negative things and we forget to really look to that gratitude. And I think that really, really, and I can speak that for Guatemala and Kenya as far as what I saw there in this ability to focus in on what is working, what is going well, and what that does for your outlook in life and what that does for our mental well-being. And as we look here in the US, and it's just a reality, I had a moment today where it hit me again, but we're constantly being marketed, what are you missing in your life? And if I get this, I'm 50, almost 53 years old, and if I get this next beauty product, I'm going to look 25 again, which we know is not happening. Or if you need this next level house, you need this next level car, and it keeps everyone in this state of dissatisfaction. And whereas if we were
Lack.
able to, living in scarcity, not abundance, and knowing what is abundance though, is what is your, like, I'm rich. Everybody's definition of rich is different. Maybe for me, my definition of rich is, can I walk into the grocery store, buy everything I need for my family, and never look at my checking account? Maybe that's rich, right? So I think that those cultures, we can really learn from these experiences, like how to focus in on the blessings, the gratitude, the things that are going well in our lives, not what we think we're missing.
I would say, let me add to that. Again, there's so many countries I got the truly privileged to get to go and experience. And the one I've talked about on this podcast many times and has begat some grief is Bahrain. And,
Mm,
with the recent incidents, I was flying out in May this month to go and visit for a month. But what I got to have there, 70% expat, is I got to know all these cultures who literally maybe made some of them 150, $200 a month.
yes, yes.
But the gratitude, they work 6 days a week, 12 hours a day.
Hmm.
And that's where I discovered that, well, that's the majority of the world that does that. They get
Right.
1 day a week, and that 1 day a week is spent to go to mosque or whatever their belief is,
Hmm.
to do their laundry, to get food into the plate,
Right.
and there's such a gratitude and not even a thought to complain about it. And we're not
Right.
talking like a third world country. We're
Hmm.
talking a pretty established country.
Right.
Um, it really opened my eyes, and there were times I just had to not open the news from home
Sure.
because it definitely gives you another view.
Hmm. Well, I will say it's for sure, and you've definitely had some amazing, beautiful experiences in with your cultures of Bahrain and Japan that I have not experienced. But it is, like you said, interesting when you start looking at all of these things. What does that mean, right? And I know for
Mhm.
myself, my when I returned back from doing stuff in Kenya, I actually found it quite difficult for a while to work in clinical practice in the U.S.
Oh,
because I had to readjust to, and it is what it is, first world problems. And
sure.
but as therapists, we know everything is relevant and it's all relative to where someone is in life. But it was really, really hard to hear what someone interpreted as a problem when you had seen and witnessed some of the difficulties or watched people embrace challenges in a different way, right? Again, like I said,
Well said.
it's hard it's all relative to your situation and everyone gets their moment, but it was very difficult and actually led me to that's what actually I went back to school and got a master's in public health because I thought, hey, I have to go do something with this, what teaching basic hand washing and getting antibiotics into the hands of people. This seems like something that really matters at this point,
A
so it
desire to
causes
make a
a real,
difference
yeah,
in a
it,
concrete, practical way.
and I think that having returned from the UK, I think that that is one thing that Europe does well, and that is the gap year. And I think that we here in the US do not value travel and experiences for our children the way that they do in other, particularly the European nation. And whether we could send our children outside the United States is irrelevant. Have your children, I know for my children, they went to I'm in North Carolina, they went to South Carolina and helped rebuild homes in flooded areas. Have you given your young people experiences where they've been able to be in context with people that are different than how they grew up and have lived in situations that are more challenging than them? That is when I think people begin to, one, understand the similarities that people have that they think are so vastly different, right? But also they begin to understand just exactly what are their blessings, their privileges, and the things that maybe they, because if you go to school aside people every day who are just like you or who are maybe better off than you, you need a moment to see something that's different from your own context.
So, for those who don't know, do you want to explain gap year?
Yes. So a gap year is the year that kids don't go to college, they don't work, they literally strap a backpack on their back with just their minimal possessions. And they go from hostel to hostel, and those are very interesting living accommodations. Right? They might sleep on the
It
floor or
teaches so
share it
much.
with 20 other people. And they travel around to different countries and different places having different experiences. So yeah, that's what that is.
Amazing. The whole idea of being able to get out there and experience life a little bit. Why do you think that we don't honor that, or a lot of us don't honor that gap year?
Yeah, I think there's a multitude of reasons. One, if I had to rewind back in time, I'm going to use my own father as an example. I mean, my father was born in 1948. Like it was all about survival. They were living on the margin. He had to hurry up and get a job and begin to bring in income. He actually brought in income while in high school for his grandmother. So, economically speaking, I think that obviously that's a big contributing factor for many generations that would not lead to that. I think culturally it's just a different experience. I think it's really become valued that going to college or taking that next step is what is expected. And I think it goes back to cultural expectations, right? So in our country, that's the expectation that you would either get into the workforce, join the military, or go to college, right? And so to do anything other than that is like bizarre. I also think if you go back and to be fair, you look at it, how Europe is set up, it's like all of our states, right? To travel from country to country in Europe, I just did that, was like driving to
Easy.
Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina,
So
Tennessee.
easy.
It's
Yeah.
so easy. So there's also that piece to it. So in order to do something like that, that's when I said, if we looked at it here, it doesn't necessarily have to be to go to another country, but have you even been to another part of your state, really, or a part of your
Out
context?
of
I
your
know I
town.
was exactly, I was doing a rotation in hospital chaplaincy years ago, and I'll never forget this gentleman. He was very proud of it too now. He had never left the county that I was working in, never left the borders of the county, and he was so proud of that he had never left. And
Yeah.
maybe that was great, right? But I think if we're not getting out and at least meeting people outside of, even in your own county, are you meeting people from the other side of the tracks? Are you meeting people from the other church across the street? Like, how are we interfacing? Because I think that's the moment when you find out that people are more alike than they are different.
Right. And I love the differences. But you're
Mm-hmm.
right, more alike than different. One of my previous jobs, I think I was a new counselor actually. I was an advisor at a college, and I was amazed back to the point about the gap year. Um, Things over the years, because I was there for quite a while, sped up, meaning it was no longer, oh, you're a junior in high school, let's start planning for your college. It was,
Mm,
no, we're going to start before that
yes.
doing dual credit and doing,
Yes.
and hurry, hurry, hurry. And the idea of a gap year really makes some parents very anxious. Like,
Sure. It,
I need to
yeah.
make sure if you don't get in, I'm afraid you won't go. And so
Yes.
therefore, and just to say, hey, what's your major going to be? And to be able to look at potential students and say, it's okay if you don't know. It's okay
Right.
not to know. But back, just interesting, back to the different cultures. Was there any cultures in your visits or living, for whatever reason, that you were unpleasantly surprised? I could
Mm,
tell you mine too.
yeah. So traveling, I can just relate to that. Traveling, I did not necessarily have that experience living, but I think that I was a bit off put by my trip to Scotland. Um,
Really?
yes, and a bit, but I will say, I want to say a shout out to all my Scottish peeps and Scottish friends that I am going to give you another go. So I'm not going to judge it on that one experience.
Right. The great
But
excuse to go back, right?
absolutely, research is important, right? Research is important. But I think that part of that was growing up in Western North Carolina. Many people may not remember their geography, but the highlands of North Carolina and Scotland actually were brother and sister and broke off topography wise.
I
So
didn't
there
know
is
that.
that real connection between Scotland and Western North Carolina. And so I did feel connected to the land, and more so unexpectedly than I thought I would, kind of like my own Outlander experience, right?
You can
But
feel it when you land,
yeah,
right?
I understand it historically for the Scottish people. Like there's a lot of rub, of course, between England and Scotland. I mean, there's like,
Mhm.
a lot going on there that I can't even speak well about. But I did found them to be very standoffish, very a little bit not as willing to talk as I like people to be able to talk, right?
Yeah.
So again, to all the Scottish people, I will be giving you another go of it, and maybe you found me quite annoying, and I'm happy to understand that to be truth. So I
You're
think
very
we're
open. I love that.
yeah, and I will say, I think what was surprising for me about the people that I might have thought would have been the more brusque and difficult to navigate, I found to be the most beautiful part, and that was Eastern Europe, Bulgaria, Slovenia,
Oh,
um, Serbia, those areas, Croatia. While the people may not come across like from a countenance standpoint or your initial like warm and gushy like we might be in the South, right?
yeah.
But they were very welcoming and embracing, and I found that to be a very beautiful culture that I was not prepared or as well understood as well. So, yeah, but yeah, I mean, I think you just have to take it for what it is. You have to understand one thing to help Americans when we travel. You're going into someone else's home. You're going into someone else's backyard. So you have to be understanding that you're not the top dog in that place. Like, we have to be ready to be willing to understand this is the culture, this is what's going on. I think that helps to go in with that mindset, right?
Well, and um, I've quoted him many times. Kurt Vonnegut said, I return home from my travels without a country, because
Mm,
a way to know what your tendencies are is to get out of the area. And
yes.
I didn't know that I had always made assumptions that everybody wanted to be in America, and we were so blessed. We are blessed, okay? I
Hmm.
will not deny that. But I found that people were not in a hurry to get here.
Mm. I think that one of the things that has been powerful for me, particularly in doing the mission work in different contexts, there is that assumption sometimes that people want to come here, and especially for people who have to flee difficult situations. But when you've actually spent time in their country, and I'll use Guatemala as an example, and you meet their families that have been left behind, and you meet these situations head to head and why people had to flee situations, what you find out is people didn't want to leave home. Would you want to leave your home? Most people don't want to leave their home. They don't want to leave their way of life.
Not if
They,
they're
if
being made to go, especially.
Exactly. If they had, for many of them who have fled situations, they were extremely, extremely difficult situations. And so I think, and I'll be the first to say, talk about, like you said, owning it. The first time I was asked to go on a trip to Guatemala, all I could think about was just despair and desert and ugliness. And I'm going to go ahead and tell you, it's one of the most beautiful countries in the world. It is
Gorgeous.
probably one of,
Gorgeous.
I've already told my children, do not travel here, here, or there. You can go see some of the most beautiful things right here in that
In
particular
America.
country. Yeah, even in America. But where
Well,
I'm going with
and
that
it's Central
is
America. So
exactly where I'm going is that unfortunately these types of stereotypes lead to a lot of different thought processes that are actually not true when you get to see the place or meet the people who are actually from those particular places. I mean, it's like assuming that all Americans, or well, I'll use North Carolina as an example. I mean, someone who lives in Raleigh or Charlotte is not going to be the same animal as someone from Jones County, North Carolina. So, it's all about understanding, do you know the people on the ground in the area, and not just what you think something is, right?
it's like when somebody says, "Oh, Texas, I hate Texas," and I'm like, "You're gonna have to be more specific."
Right, exactly, exactly,
There's so
exactly.
much to it.
Right. Or all people with a southern accent have a low IQ, Okay, cool. That's great. That's fabulous. So we have these stereotypes in the North Carolina, I mean in the States, right? You're from the north. Oh, you're from the south. Oh, or
Yankee.
yeah, exactly. So I think it's just where what are your thought processes related to that?
And how open the mind is. And even if I have a not so great experience in a place, I'd rather go and experience that. And then I at least, and it's not a bad place. It's that
Hmm.
time.
Hmm.
I'm like you, I'm willing to give it another chance, you know?
Yes. I'm willing to say and roll the dice that 9 times out of 10, if I have a difficult experience, I was probably the difficulty. So,
Or there's reasons for the difficulty. For example, I've been to Germany many, many times, and Um, my first experience was for about, this is back in the day when what we do for a living, it was for 4 weeks. And I found it's a hard way to learn what the rules are, but the Germans are renowned for being very meticulous, very detailed. There
mm,
is no gray.
exactly.
And that's the way to find out is to go there and then they give you the stink eye and you're like, okay, don't do that again.
Right.
So what about positive that was like you assumed it was okay, but you were just blown away by how amazing it was. Other you did mention the Eastern Bloc of Europe, but
Hmm. Yeah, so Florence, Italy totally lived up to the card and beyond. I mean,
and walkable.
walkable. I mean, but the people, the Italian people there. And I think sometimes when it's a quote touristy city, which obviously Florence is, you sometimes can get that we call, we have compassion fatigue. I call it tourism fatigue, tourist fatigue, that they just would get tired of tourists, and understandable. But I
Understandable.
found them to be very hospitable. And if you were at least attempting, because anybody that hears this accent right here knows if I'm trying to speak Italian, that would be horrifying. So, but if you were just attempting to do, they would say, oh, and they would just give you the word, and just they were just gracious that you were even trying, right,
Very
to use
honored.
the
Yeah.
language. So that was lovely. So definitely that. But Dublin, Ireland, Dublin, Ireland, hands down. Don't know what it is.
Very
My maiden name
friendly.
is Collins, so maybe it's the
That's
Irish in
it.
me. I
It's
don't
the
know.
coldest place I have ever been to, other than Kansas in London, Kansas and London. Those are the
Really?
coldest.
Oh
Yeah.
no, I've been colder. Yeah, no.
Ugh. Dublin. I went 3 times, and one time I missed my bus stop, and by the time I got to my apartment, which was not that far, I like maybe 6 blocks, I couldn't move my hands.
Oh wow. Yeah, definitely.
Very cold, very cold. But
But I do want to put a little thought out there for those of your listeners. I grew up. I did not get on an airplane until I was almost, as far as to leave the United States, I was almost 40 years old. That's the
same.
first time I ever left the United States.
Exactly
My
40 exact. In
How
fact,
about that? My first flight was to Kenya, to Nairobi, Kenya. So I had to fly all the way to London, change planes, and then get on another plane. Thankfully, I had a couple of folks from my church with me. One of them, I just actually had lunch with her last week, and she was like, Melissa, I can't believe it. When I see all the places you're going, I think about that young girl had never even left the United States, and here you are doing all this. So I say that to say, anybody who's listening to your podcast, whether they're young with starry eyes or maybe they're like, oh, I'm too old to do that, you're not. You are
never,
not. Never,
never.
ever. And I remember reading blogs and listening to podcasts and thinking that of the people who would put out things into the universe, like my year of living abroad or doing whatever. And I thought, well, I could never do that, but I really want to. And you know what? If you really, really want to do it and start figuring out how to do it. And you may say, well, that's great. I'm glad that worked out for you. But this has been like a 15-year process. This didn't happen overnight, right? I took my first trip in 2012 to Kenya to do that short term work. And it was 2025 before I was able to find the road and the opportunity to live abroad for that year. So if it's something that really speaks to you, whether it's a short term trip or a long term moment of working somewhere, do get the world is at your fingertips with these devices. As much as I just spoke of the negativity, right? You also have everything that you need to kind of make that a reality. And with telework nowadays, where people are able to do many jobs remotely, there are people who are taking their laptop and renting Airbnbs all over the world and working. So hey, it's out there.
That is really cool. I've even found some sites. I apologize, everybody, because I couldn't tell you what they are, but where you can go and volunteer for the summer or something and
Hmm.
get lodging. You have to work for it, but that's kind of cool to me,
Right.
wherever
Yeah,
you want to visit,
exactly. Yeah.
or
So,
hostels or something like that.
hmm
So your favorite, you said pleasantly surprised, was Dublin.
hmm
Okay.
yep.
Um, what would you say is, you said you're kind of not your worst, but something that wasn't great the time you went. But you're gonna give it another chance, and I love that. I love that. Have you been any area like in Asia?
No, I have not had that opportunity, but it is on my list.
Okay. Yeah, there's so many amazing experiences there too. I
Hmm.
couldn't tell you probably a bad experience I've had anywhere. Um, if you had to choose a place that you were going to retire and it had to be overseas,
Mm.
where would that be for you?
See, that's so hard.
Very.
It's so hard because there's something that I love about every place I've ever been, right? But
So
if you're
maybe a place where
saying,
you could travel.
right, 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 that's probably a great point. I will have to say that there was something about where I lived in England. There was something to me very, very deep in my soul that I almost felt like I had come home, like that I had been lost from this place my whole life. I am also a huge history buff. And so to be walking
Oh,
so connected, my church that I worship in is, built in the like 1200s. Come on now. And I mean, it just everything there is like literally walking close to history. I'm also a writer, and so to spend time in Cambridge in literary heaven, to be able to be that close to Dickens, Shakespeare, Austen, all things.
mm,
So I think probably if I could, I would live there. And like you said, with this great proximity to all the other places that I cannot fathom of watering or weeding them out, right?
right. So England, Kenya, you've been to visit. Oh, it'd be hard to say. If you were going to say your favorite thing about each place, that'd take too long, wouldn't it?
I'll give a stab at it. Um, Kenya, just the people. I mean, I don't know how any other way to say it except for
Amazing.
the
So
most
friendly.
so the warmest hearts, hugs, all the things. And ironically, the best guacamole I ever had was in Kenya because it was made from the
What?
lady had an avocado tree in her backyard and
Oh,
made fresh guacamole. So that was there.
wow.
Guatemala, the food, the
Food.
food. And
Yeah,
Melissa is not really a foodie. I'm kind of a little like 4-year-old in a grown woman's body. I'm a little persnickety about my food. So, but the food, phenomenal. Again, the people are phenomenal there too, but the beauty of the country, and then, like I said, England, just everything. And the British are lovely. The British
they
are
really
just
are.
lovely. Fancy that. They are lovely.
They
Um,
are. They are.
and now then they'll tell you that's not a lie. Their food ain't that great. Okay, I'm sorry. They need some cooking lessons from my grandma. They need some seasonings. They need
Then
to
what would
stump
they
the
be known for? They're known
right.
for their bad food.
Well, that true story. And I got news for them. Scones are just dried biscuits with some fruit thrown up in there. So
Oh,
no, but I did have some good scones. But and they did not convert me to tea. I still love my coffee, and I had actually some of the best coffee in espresso for sure in
there.
England.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So, um,
Every culture
Italy,
known to man there.
Italy, shaken espresso is life. I love the shaken espresso. I don't drink alcohol, so anything coffee is my drug of choice. So it was, but their shaken espressos are just fabulous. And anywhere that's going to let me just drink coffee, undeniably just fine because it's
Any
part of the
time of day or
culture.
night.
I'm good to
So
go.
when you say
Yeah.
shaken, I mean, I lived in Naples, but I don't remember the shaken.
So they take shots of espresso and put it like in a martini shaker with ice and shake it up and pour it over ice. And then it's embellished with like espresso beans, and they'll
Mhm.
put like a little bit of sweetener if you want it in there. So it's almost like a coffee martini without the alcohol. So there's
I
that.
think in Naples, at least when I was there, it was so old school that they were actually offended if you tried to touch their espresso, except in the traditional way. I
Oh
think
yeah,
maybe.
and do not order in Italy. This is for everybody. Do not order a cappuccino past 11 a.m. That is a hard no. That is a big party foul, right? Don't do
And don't
that.
add any creamer to to espresso.
No. Uh,
Espresso.
so so true story. The things that I miss the most living in England that I came home to. You should see my refrigerator right now. I have like 6 flavors of Chobani creamer in there right now because I did miss coffee creamer. I do love it. And I did miss my actual Keurig machine because they have like the Nespresso machines, but not the Keurig.
Hmm.
So I'm like a little dog. Every morning I make my way like to my bowl and I just wait for my coffee to brew. And then it's this whole moment at the refrigerator. Oh, what flavor? What are we going to have today?
So you're a 4-year-old dog.
I'm a 4-year-old dog. Exactly. Roof, roof. Yep. Which makes me what, like 28 in dog years or something. So yeah.
I love that. You'll live forever. You've heard the research on the mitochondria with
There you
coffee.
go.
You're
Yeah.
going to be here
Good, good,
forever.
good. Oh, my children are like, oh Lord. There's no I used all my money traveling, so there's nothing to leave them. So they should want me to live forever anyway.
Exactly. So what about in Ireland, your favorite part of Ireland?
Oh, Giant's Causeway, beautiful, absolutely beautiful,
Yeah.
gorgeous. But I'll tell you my shocker that I enjoyed the most while I was in Ireland. Let me just say this. In Europe in general, the museums are first rate, whether they're art, history, whatever. However, Ireland has some fabulous museums. They have the Immigration Museum, which is fabulous, but they've just opened within the past several years the Titanic Museum. In case people are not familiar, the Titanic was actually built in Belfast. It did
Wow.
not launch from there, of course, but it was built in that harbor. And so they have, and I'm sorry, everybody, you can't throw things at me because this is a podcast, but I wasn't really like this huge Titanic fan of all that. But however, this museum captivated me from start to finish. The museum is
Wow.
actually, it's in Belfast, of course, and it is built in the shape of the front of the boat to the exact height of the actual
Wow. You
boat.
get to feel
And
the
exactly.
size.
And you start at the bottom of the museum and it works its way from the actual inception of the plans for the boat, black and white video of people building and assembling the ship, actual like old hardcore early 1900s, right? And comes all the way to this very well done, not over the top, but theatrical ending with, the boat sinking and lights going out and the names of the people. So
Wow.
beautifully, beautifully done museum. So that was definitely, but you know, Trinity College, the Book of Kells. What can you say? There's just so much in Ireland.
Mm.
The
For
and
such
what
a
I love,
small island, it's pretty small.
it's true. But walking into a pub and there's live music and people are dancing, and this is not a show that's being put on to you because you're at Disney
No,
World. This is how
they're just that
people live.
happy.
This is how people live.
You know what I really appreciated, Melissa, about at least Dublin? I got out of Dublin, but I mean, like, and I'm assuming it's that way all over, but the pubs that would have, an older woman sitting there, but she's not alone because everybody talks to everybody. It was like one
Exactly.
big party all the
Yes.
time.
Yes, for sure. For sure.
Oh, I
Hmm.
was there um about a month after Dolores O'Riordan from the Cranberries, they are from Belfast,
Hmm.
was found.
Mm,
She was found in a bathtub, for those that don't know,
mm,
accidental drowning. And um, I was just amazed. Being a singer, that's my favorite band. And I got
yeah.
up there and I sang, and I thought they're either going to kill me or one day I'll get to tell my grandkids about this. And
Hmm.
I sang, their most famous song, Zombie. I got up there in the pub and just grabbed the microphone and sang. And when I
And they
opened
probably
my
loved it.
eyes, yeah, when I opened my eyes, because when I'm singing, I'm lost in the song. I opened my eyes and there were tears. And
Right.
that's when I
Yeah.
knew that whew, that
That was
was the
powerful.
most
Yeah.
nervous I've ever been. But I thought, why not,
Might as
right?
well. Yeah, might as well. Yeah.
See what
Hmm.
happens. But
See what
yeah,
happens.
yeah.
Hmm.
So that is pretty fascinating. Coming back to US, of course you're back with the knowledge that you'll be leaving again, but
Yes.
just like I shared the sound sensitivity I have and what loud culture, what have been in your biggest adjustments when you come back to the US?
Yeah, I think, like I said, although I returned to a pretty rural part of North Carolina, I was living in a rural part of England. I have to say, I'm sorry, but I'm going to put this out here to my home state people. Please, 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 for the love of all that is holy, stop tailgating people.
Oh,
Like, I mean, I lived in another country where I was a foreigner driving. Within 3 hours of landing off the plane, they threw me in a car. I had to learn to drive in a roundabout on a different side of the road. Now, yes, did some people blow the horn at me? Of course they did, because I was going the wrong way in a roundabout and they should have blown the horn at me. Okay. Now that's a true story multiple times. But I am
that
telling
scares
you,
me.
no, I'm
That was
telling
me in
you, once,
Naples, yes.
but I'm telling you, even there, learning to drive and navigating, I did not encounter the rude high level of not just aggressive driving, but road rage.
Aggressive.
I've been here less than a month and I've just had, my children are tired of hearing about it because I am constantly complaining about it. So, okay, so just, just the like, not just on the road, but I even sense it in stores, like this, like, everybody, it's kind of focused on themselves, right? And that's not to say I haven't had some good encounters. I just sat in the nail salon today and had a lovely conversation, made a great connection with the lady by me who owns a local business who I can do some other things with. So I don't want
Yay.
to say that, but I will
No, you're
say,
sharing the most difficult adjustments, and this is one
easing
of
back
them.
into that, but I also think not trying not to get sucked into that vortex of, because what's the first thing people are asking me? I've been on the ground, I've got my feet on the ground for 10 minutes. What are you going to be doing? Where are you working? What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? And I'm like, I'm just trying to breathe right now. I'm just trying to, get my mind wrapped around where I am and what I'm doing.
Get to where you
So
can sleep again.
um but also there's positives. The first place I went to was straight to a good Mexican restaurant because England does not have any of my good Latin flair over there. So I've missed all of my good local Latin restaurants. So, and I
Uh,
have missed shrimp and grits. I had to have shrimp and grits. So
so
there's that. so, so
you
there's
know what
also
I
a lot of
miss?
positives.
And I'm out here in West Texas, but at least in this area, I need to go to San Antonio. They've got a good Middle Eastern restaurant. I miss that because we
That
just don't have it
became
here.
my comfort food while I was in England because those are as prevalent as like Mexican restaurants are for us here. So
Yeah.
my Turkish restaurant was my
Oh,
go-to on Friday night. And yes, I will be looking forward to getting back to that when I return.
well, you know what? I definitely admire you for getting to be in that culture longer. That is really beautiful. I love it. I love it. And keeping in mind, I love where I live here in West Texas. Great people who still have eye contact with you and connect and stuff. And it wide streets and people don't run you over and you can get to the other side of the city, which is over 100,000 people. But you can get to the other side of the city within 15, 20 minutes, you know.
Yeah.
It was like a slow roll back into the US for me.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
whenever I go home, and home is right outside of Dallas Fort Worth, I have to like steel myself to that aggression that you're talking about.
Hmm.
It's
Yeah.
tough.
Which is nice because I'm now down east, the furthest I can just about go. I live on the Crystal Coast near Swansboro, North Carolina, and it's much
Yeah.
quieter here, much calmer here. The people
Yeah.
are, everybody's in a little bit happier mood by the water. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
So that's been
It
a
makes a
nice change of
difference.
pace. It does, and I will say that I noticed it. I've been here for about 3 days, and I was like, oh my goodness, it's so quiet here. Like it's just so quiet, which was nice after the return and the noise and the busyness. So I really have enjoyed the peace and quiet that this place brings.
I love it. I love it. I believe Swansboro, I actually, my first college job position was reunion planning, and oh no, that was in Georgia. Never mind, that wasn't North Carolina. I had,
Georgia, North Carolina,
yeah,
it can happen.
same accent or similar.
Yep. Hmm.
I had all of Georgia and all of New Jersey. Definitely a difference. Definitely a difference.
Oh, I would say that's a big difference between New Jersey folks and Georgia. Yeah. That could
Yeah.
probably incite a brand new civil war if you wanted to decide bring it on.
Oh, I'm telling you, it was definitely my first foray into different cultures that can happen within US. And, and then of course, since then, a difference
Hmm.
in the accent between different
Hmm.
parts of a state, as you know.
Hmm.
Um, so many different things. I can usually point out East Texas versus West Texas versus, Central
Yeah.
and the southern
Hmm.
tip as well of Texas
Hmm.
anyway. So anyway, um, how about Melissa? Thank you so much for sharing your experiences. It's not often I get to speak with someone who is so well traveled and so open to the different cultures. You know, has there been any frustrating, not to put you on the spot, frustrating comments made to you since you returned? I will share mine and then to kind of give you an idea what I'm talking about. Um, Someone was saying, where did you come back from? And of course, this is this trip home. So I said, from Japan. And I said, such lovely people, such lovely people. And the person with good intentions said, yeah, but they don't have our God. And
Mm.
that punches me in the gut. It really punches me in the gut when we
Mm.
when we use God as a superior, to be superior. That bothers me. And
Hmm.
that hits me in a different way than it used to before I traveled. And
Right.
so that's a whole new subject matter to
Hmm.
discuss the different things that I learned and how much I've spiritually become so much more open as
Hmm.
well.
Yeah. Um, I have I will say have been very selective with who I have chosen to interact with upon returning on
Okay.
purpose.
Okay.
And I did that because I knew one, being gone for so long, also the intensity of kind of the work that we do, especially recently. And I've just been very protective of myself in that way. And
Well
I'll be
done.
honest, because I have really, and I've got so much more to go. Like anyone who wants to say, well, I'm not biased, I'm not this, we all are. Let's get real.
It's
Um,
fact.
it's fact. And when you say that, you let me know very quickly that you are not aware of your own stuff, right?
Yeah.
So I know that I have so much more to travel to do to learn to understand. But let me say that the more that I have immersed myself into other places and spaces over the years, my bandwidth for your, not necessarily that you won't go there. I don't care about that. But your bandwidth for not being open to at least that I'm okay with those things, I don't have
Mhm.
space and margin for that anymore. And
Well
so, given
done.
the fact that I've crossed over the 50-year mark and I'm getting closer to the end of the whatever will happen with me, I have decided that I do not use my energy in those spaces anymore. So, to say that, probably I haven't had any negative experiences coming back. However, let us know that that is a very controlled environment that this spaceship has landed back into.
I like that. I think that's the majority of somewhat 40, 50 for sure.
Mm-hmm.
As
Mm-hmm.
I get closer to 60, it's definitely this area of being more selective. It doesn't mean I'm
Yes.
better than anybody. It means
Nope.
that if it causes me harm or discomfort,
Mm-hmm.
I think you start to look at how precious life is.
Exactly. Exactly.
So,
And I just have decided to surround myself with people who either say to me, that is awesome. That's not for me, but I'm so happy that that's good for you, right? Check, check,
yeah.
you can come. Or people who also travel in my circles, whether they do my work or different work, and they understand what it is to be driven by this, because once you do it, you're bit by the travel bug, right? And you just get hungry for more. It's a drug. And it's not,
Yeah.
honestly, I always thought it was about the places, but it's really about the people, right?
It
It's
is.
really about the people. And I think one of my favorite experiences ever, abroad was sitting in Antigua, Guatemala, in the top of a rooftop bar. There had to be at least 8 different nationalities represented, all on this rooftop bar. We were all in this conversation back and forth and back and forth and back and forth.
Oh my gosh, that's
We
amazing.
were all talking about our leaders and how they were so out of touch with the common people. And so
Mhm.
what you found in this moment was this common thread between all of us, right, as human beings and connectivity, and that
Globally.
the divide is not really there. That divide is an artificial thing that then gets inflated by these multiple things, right? So it just really,
Amazing.
really, really cool. Yeah.
Wow. Would you like to share the name of your book?
Actually, I have several books. Yes, I'm happy
Okay,
to share those with you.
please do.
So, my very first book I wrote was actually a children's book, and that was published in 2016. That book is called Elizabeth and Stella Meet Zoe. And Zoe is not actually a person, Zoe is a ministry. It's Zoe Empowers, if anybody wants to check into that. And what Zoe Empowers does is they keep children in their homes versus going into orphanages when their parents pass on. And
Wow.
those children work together to keep their brothers and sisters back in school and help to break that cycle of poverty that can happen. Most of their parents, unfortunately, at the time I was working with the project, were had succumbed to HIV and passed on from those results. So the story is actually about an American girl named Elizabeth, and it parallels her life along with a young Kenyan girl named Stella, who I actually met a real Stella. And the
Oh,
reason I fell in love with Stella is because she had very little, but she welcomed us into her home and gave us something to drink and something to eat as if we were the kings and queens of the world. And she just really melted my heart. And for me, I am a Christian, and she washed our hands, and it felt like Jesus washing my feet, and it was just
from
beautiful.
your purity of spirit.
Exactly. That was well said. That's exactly how to describe her. So I wanted to be able to write something that would help children see that children who live in other parts of the world like to play with balls. They like to giggle. They like to laugh. They like to play with their siblings. They like to play jokes on their siblings. And so the purpose of the book was to show that, and to show that small acts of compassion that they can have as young people can make a difference across the whole globe. So that's the children's book. And then I wound up writing a book called Common Threads: Why the Answers to the Present Lie in the Past. That's actually a memoir slash self help book that I never intended to write. It was actually a narrative journal that I was using for my own personal trauma therapy to
Divinely
recover from.
inspired.
Yeah, to recover from a very, very sudden divorce and traumatic experience in my life, and quickly becoming a single mom overnight. So wrote that book, and that wound up getting published at the encouragement of many of my therapist friends, who was like, this can help people. So that book is available on Amazon. And then I finally got to write the book I always thought I was going to write, which was an adult fiction novel, which is what I always wanted to do. And that book was published in 2024. That book is called Grounds for Return. And it is set in Western North Carolina in the Yadkin Valley, which is where I grew up. And
Okay.
that area used to be the tobacco capital of the world. It is now the wine capital of the East Coast, surprisingly,
What?
which is snicker funny, because many of these were dry counties when I was growing up. You couldn't buy a drop of alcohol anywhere around. But now Jesus drank wine, so it's all good, and we have wineries.
They're all
But
good.
anyway, but it's a fun story that actually my main character comes home after living abroad for many years. So there's that tie in for her. And she's only home temporarily, wink, wink, right, to help her family out. Her sister's going through some health issues. And she, imagine this, stumbles across her former old flame, and some fun insights with the book, and some plot twists are done. And some people are still angry at me about some of those plot twists, but that's okay. That means it was a good plot twist, right? And I am
But
here.
what I'm hearing is a Lifetime movie channel.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I am just putting the polishing touches on my novel that I wrote while I was in England. And that book is actually a cozy mystery, as I was inspired by being around, all of the Agatha Christie and all of the abbeys and the cool things.
Oh, yes.
So it's set between, mostly it's set here in Swansboro, North Carolina. I actually lead ghost tours here in Swansboro. So it's got some fun, twisty turns from some of my spirits in there
Oh
and
my
just some
goodness.
fun little things there. So that'll be coming out hopefully late this year, early next year. But they can follow me at Melissa Collins Harrell Author on Facebook or find me on Instagram and yeah, see what it's all about.
Well, I will be tagging you so that they can have this information as
Sweet.
well. And it's really, truly a pleasure to meet you. And thank you, Wendy, for connecting us. I
Yeah,
love
yeah.
that.
Wendy's a good one, right?
She is. She
Yeah,
is. She says she can't wait to hear the podcast. And this
yeah.
has been very rewarding for me. Thank you so much for blessing me and definitely the crowd
Hmm.
with your experiences and keep spreading the joy that you have and making a
Yeah.
difference in people's lives.
Well, thank you for having me and thank you for holding space for these important conversations so that we can all grow and learn. And big moment for your people. You're
And
never
that
too young or
it
you're
doesn't
never
have
too
to
old to
be what we've
dream.
always done, right?
That's
Things can be
right. Shake it
different.
up.
Yeah.
Shake it up. That's right.
Thank you, Melissa.
Yeah. Have a great
And
day.
thank
Thank
you,
you so much.
everybody. Sorry about that. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. And like I said, please like, share, follow, subscribe, all of those things. It'll really help us get the word out there, okay? Thanks, Melissa.
Thank you.